Okay, guys, welcome back to the Upper Tier podcast. And as you can see, Niall has finally got a break. Niall has been doing so much that I decided to come on for this upcoming Premier League season and let's just see what we can do with this. We're going to do a fantasy football show. Basically, I'm going to go through my fantasy team on a weekly basis. And if people want, they can come in and we can go through both teams either before or after the game week. And as the name suggests over here, Fantasy Chancer, I'm not a big, massive fantasy football guy, as in like I don't spend all night uh, thinking about my team and doing things like that. The way I approach it is I look at it from a attacking perspective rather than defensive, and it's a double-edged sword that way. But that's the way I look at it, and I tend to just go cheap at the back and plow all my money into players up top who are going to get goals. Because in the Premier League, clean sheets are not as common as they used to be, but if you have the right players for clean sheets and goals assists, well, then you can reap the benefits of that as well. Now, with that in mind, we're going to have a look at last season's top performers in fantasy football, points wise. So, if we look here at the top, you can see that Mo Salah leads the way as he kind of does in every aspect of the world. So, if you look here, Mo Salah, 265 points last year, incredible tally. And for somebody that kind of dropped off, I suppose, a little bit after Christmas, it has to be said. After the African nations, people thought it was down to tiredness. Whatever it was, he wasn't the player he was before Christmas, but you can just see he was still kind of head and shoulders above everyone. He was followed closely by Son on 258 points, which is very, very close to Mo Salah when you think about it. And it just goes to show how much devastation Son caused, particularly after Christmas with Antonio Conte there. Following on from Son, then we have Trent Alexander Arnold. Now, he's a defensive player. I don't really pump that much money into my defensive players, as I alluded to earlier. So for 7.5 million for Alexander Arnold, it would be too much of a gamble for me. But if you look at it here, for him to rack up 208 points last season from a defensive position, that just goes to show you like he's brilliant with assists. He keeps clean sheets. He's an absolute asset if you want to pump your money in that way. But for me, not for me. Jared Bowen obviously was fantastic with West Ham, and for him to like finish fourth in the standings there is pretty incredible considering the little drop off that West Ham had after Christmas when they put their eggs into the Europa League basket. He was followed then by Cancelo, another defender like Alexander Arnold, had a lot of assists last year and clean sheets to go with it. And you could see why he's just cracked over the 200 points there as well. He's followed by Kevin De Bruyne. As always, you'd expect to see De Bruyne in these kind of statistic charts when it comes to the end of the season, even though last season he had a couple of injury problems, but not as bad as the season before. Followed then, of course, by Harry Kane. You have to bear in mind with Harry Kane as well, he takes every single penalty for Tottenham. He dives to win a lot of their penalties as well, which go down as assists. That's a whole other story. Kane is one for me, though, that I always tend to have in my team because he's guaranteed to play pretty much every game. Like you're not gonna not play Harry Kane, if you're Tottenham. And especially with the service he's getting on either flank now at the moment, it's kind of dangerous. And I'd expect Harry Kane to get a lot of goals this season. Followed by Andrew Robertson and Virgil van Dijk. Yet again, Robertson assists, Van Dijk very good in the box for goals, particularly headed goals. So you're looking at 190, 186 points, sorry, for Robertson, 183 for Van Dijk. Two very, very good performers, both at the front and the back of the pitch. But obviously, that 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 then translate to, that they're expensive. At 7 million and 6.5, that wouldn't be something that I personally would be willing to risk in my team. I would much rather have paid 13 and have Mo Salah up top than even have one or two expensive defenders. And you'll see that when you see the team that I'm going to pick for the opening week, which could also change, by the way, because we are a long, long way away from the start of this season. So this is kind of just an early video to show you what I'll be doing on this channel. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at my team and I'll just explain my selections based on the way that I play this game. Okay, so as you can see here with my biased Irish hat, I have went for Gavin Bazunu in goals. Now, the reason why I've went for Gavin is I love him as a keeper. He's Irish and he's just after getting the move to Southampton. Now, I very much doubt that he is going to Southampton to sit on the bench. So I've kind of taken a gamble there with him and I've put him in straight in at 4.5 million as well. You have to remember that it seems like a good deal for a keeper that's going to be playing week in, week out. Now, followed by him, then I've went for Tomiyasu of Arsenal. Now, Arsenal would be very, very guilty of a team that doesn't keep a lot of clean sheets. That is the only concern with that one. But yet again, at his valuation of 4.5 million, I think it's just a case of me going cheap at the back to strengthen up the forward line. Followed then by, and I couldn't believe that this guy was this price, Tyrone Mings at 4.5 million also. Um, Last season racked up a decent amount of points. He's an aerial threat in the box as well. And then on the third defender, I went for Seamus Coleman, who's also only just a 4.5. Now, I'd be worried about Seamus Coleman in the fact that, his legs seemed a bit shot last season, but as the club captain of Everton and his relationship with Frank Lampard, I would still expect Coleman to be lining out for Everton this season, whether they switch to a back three with two wing backs to suit him, or I don't know exactly what's going to happen. All I think is that he's definitely going to be on that pitch this year. Then in the midfield, as I talked about going kind of heavy, I have went for Kevin De Bruyne, obviously, because you could see from the stats that I went through last season that he racks up the points. I would be concerned about his injuries, and obviously, if he was to get injured, I would kind of make a straight swap with Son. They're both valued at 12 million. And then you can see I have Mo Salah in there. He's 13 million, obviously the highest Premier League points scorer last season. So I don't think that's really a gamble having Mo in there, especially with Sadio Mane gone. I think that it's going to be a massive, massive season for Mo Salah, and I think he's going to step up to the plate and show why he was worth that contract at Liverpool. Now, the next one, this is an interesting one because I have Andres Pereira in here. Now, at the moment, he's down as a Manchester United player, okay? But his valuation is 4.5 million. And he is on the verge of joining Fulham for a 10 million fee. Now, like Bazunu, he is going to another club. He is not going to Fulham to sit on the bench. And we've seen glimpses of this guy's quality at Manchester United, and he's got something in the locker that maybe Fulham will need this season because Fulham have always been guilty of being a yo-yo club in terms of the Premier League. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. So Fulham really need to stabilise this year. And I think with someone like Pereira, maybe being able to set up goals for Mitrovic. You have to remember Mitrovic got over 35 goals, I think, last season in the championship. So if he can raise his level as well, it could be a very good year for Fulham. But Andres Pereira, I'd expect him to be a Fulham player very, very soon. Now, I've went for Calvin Phillips beside him, and this is just a case of having De Bruyne and Salah in the midfield, and then I have Calvin Phillips, he's only I think 5 million. So he's 5 million, and that's why I kind of have him in there. And plus, like the other guys, he's moved. He's going to be playing, and I think he's going to be playing the majority of games this season for Manchester City. Now, if we scroll down then, and this we go to the forward line, and this is where it gets interesting because I have managed to get kind of who I would expect as strikers to get the most goals this season in the league. Obviously, we talked about Harry Kane, serial goal scorer, fox in the box, always there for tap ins, always diving, always taking penalties, always getting scruffy goals. So Kane is a shoe in for goals, so I have to go with him. And plus, his injury record is phenomenal. The guy is very rarely injured, and his valuation this season is 11.5, so it's a little bit less than we'll say De Bruyne and Salah. But you're guaranteed the goals. And it was a toss up for me between having Harry Kane or having Son. So I went for Kane and I went for De Bruyne in the midfield over Son, just to get the two of them in. Next is Gabriel Jesus. And the reason I've went for Jesus is because if you look at Arsenal, he is going to play every single league game this season for Arsenal. I have no doubt about it because Eddie Eddie had a good end. Eddie and Nketiah had a good end to last season, but this is why you buy your talisman in. This is why you buy a striker in. He's going to play every single game this season. If he's going to play 38 games in this league season, I would expect him to be at least coming out with 20 goals. And plus, his link up play is very good, as we've seen at Man City. So if he's holding up the ball and you've got guys like Smith Rowe, Odegaard, and Saka running in behind him, I would expect Jesus to pick up assists as well. And now beside him, the man that everyone is kind of calling the signing of the season. It remains to be seen. The only slight concern I'd have about Haaland is that he had a few injury problems last season at Borussia Dortmund, so that is one to keep an eye on. But I expect him to hit the ground running at Man City, and I think like he could be the missing piece to the jigsaw, like because I thought last season Man City might come unstuck having no striker, and it never happened, and I was very surprised by that. I know they had Gabriel Jesus, but he didn't play a lot of games for them, and they went with the false nines and interchanging up top, and it worked out. But I think Pep Guardiola is a wise man, and he knows that I need to have a striker in my team, and he was waiting for the right moment. He got his man, Erling Haaland. Everyone's expecting him to light it up. So, you know, it's a very exciting time to have Haaland in the Premier League as well. He's obviously one of the most sought after strikers in world football. And at a price tag of 11.5, the same as Harry Kane, it's a no brainer. So my bench then is obviously going to be very, very weak because I've pumped a lot of money into that team, as you can see with that front three and with Salah in there as well and Kevin De Bruyne. So I've went for Willie Caballero as backup goalkeeper. I would imagine that he will be a backup goalkeeper this season. I know Southampton have like four keepers there on the books, but I expect maybe one, if not two of them, to go out on loan. And Caballero is kind of that experienced head that I would expect to be on the bench for them anyway. Followed then by Vestergaard. He did not play a lot of games last season. And this is just a kind of a 4 million player as Caballero is both 4 million. I needed to make some. I need to get some cheap players in to facilitate the firepower that I have in this team. Followed then by Jack Colback. Hard to believe this man is still playing football, but he played over 30 games for Nottingham Forest last season. He's got Premier League experience, let's not forget that. So at 4.5 million, I thought that, he's a good option to have on the bench because I think he will play a lot of minutes this season as well, even at his age. So that's the reason behind callback. And then at 4 million, Tanganga, I don't know. It's hard to know what Antonio Conte. It's another case of just a cheap defender. So with the firepower that I have in my team, I had to go cheap at the back and definitely cheap on the bench. So that is pretty much my team. So what we're going to do now is I have in here the code for the fantasy football team. So the upper tier channel has a fantasy football league. That is the code there. It's U2E7KY. If you key that into the Fantasy Premier League app or browser, our league will come up. You can join it, and we're going to have a bit of fun with this season. And that's pretty much it. This is like the longest kind of thing I've done by myself, like ever. So 14 minutes in the bag. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure and subscribe to the upper tier channel. There it is. There it is. That one. Subscribe. Thank you very much, guys.